From the islands where the sun meets the sea, Jason's the voice we all wanna be. Interviewing creators, making comics come alive. With every story, he helps us thrive. Read comics, he's got the best taste. No story too big, no hero to waste. He's the man with the passion and the insight, bringing comics to life, shining bright. Jason from Hawaii, diving in deep, unveiling the stories that we wanna keep. From creators to heroes, he's got the scoop on the comics for fun and profit loops. So tune in, you don't wanna miss. Jason's the voice of comic book bliss. From Marvel to DC, indie and more, Jason's the guy who opens the door with every interview. He's setting the stage, bringing creators to life, page by page. He loves the craft, the art and the lore. Comic books are where they'll always explore. So grab your books and listen in. Jason's the guide, let the journey begin. Jason from Hawaii, diving in deep, unveiling the stories that we wanna keep. From creators to heroes, he's got the scoop on the comics for fun and profit loops. So tune in, you don't wanna miss. Jason's the voice of comic book bliss. With a heart for comics and a voice that's true, Jason's the co-host, bringing the crew. In every interview, you'll hear the spark, a passion for comics that leaves a mark. Jason from Hawaii, diving in deep, unveiling the stories that we wanna keep. From creators to heroes, he's got the scoop on the comics for fun and profit loops. So tune in, you don't wanna miss. Jason's the voice of comic book bliss. Jason from the islands with comics in his soul. Every episode, he's making it whole. With every page turned and every story told, Jason's the comic book guy, pure gold.
Aloha! It's Jason from Hawaii. Welcome to a special edition of the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. In this episode, I will be interviewing American writer, producer, director, actor, comic book creator, Emmy Award winner, and in 2033 Academy Award winner, producer for Best Picture of MORTEM, Kevin Shinick. Kevin, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm great now that I know I'm going to win an Academy Award in 8 years. This is fantastic.
Yes.
Aloha. Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you. And of course, let's make the big announcement. Timothy. Oh God, I'm blanking on his name. The guy who played in Dune. Timothy Chalamet. Yeah. He's gonna play you in that movie.
I should be so lucky. So lucky.
Just sign him on right now. Just say, hey, $100,000 will have a movie, and
done and done. Jason, I like your attitude.
Right.
We're going places. We're definitely going places.
Right. Thank you. Now, so listeners, we're going to have fun in this episode. We are going to have fun. Kevin is here to promote his new Kickstarter, MORTEM.
Right. It's a graphic novel called MORTEM, and we can get into it. You can start, and I'll jump in. How's that? Oh yeah, that's no problem. So, and I've told Kevin I may call it postmortem because I'm thinking of Mick Garris, the famous horror director, his podcast Postmortem. And if you guys get a chance, check out that podcast. It's very good. But we are going to talk about Kevin's Kickstarter MORTEM. Now, Kevin, I'm just going to go over briefly some of your past works. Jump in. Oh my God, we're going to be here all day.
Yes. All right. Now, he was the host and squadron leader in the PBS, the famous PBS TV series Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego.
Correct.
In 2004, he wrote, directed, and starred in the romantic comedy It's About Time.
Mm.
So he
All
was
true. All true. I can vouch for it all.
he was a writer, producer, creative director for Adult Swim Robot Chicken. I
Right.
love that show. That
Oh, me too. We have a great
oh,
time on that show.
oh my God, man. The host of we're going off the track. The host of cameo celebrities that you guys got was
Oh,
amazing.
I know. It's endless. It is endless,
Yes.
and everybody just like you, there's a lot of fans of the show out there. So it's like everybody was like asking us to be on the show, which
Mhm.
was amazing. And we went out to people that we were like, we'll never get this person and we'll never get it. And they were like, yeah, let's do it. So it's just, that's just an amazing uh Seth Green, Matt Senreich are the co-creators of that, and they just created this whole world that we were all happy to be a part of.
Ah, that's so great. And also too, so also listeners, also because Robot Chicken is in between jobs right now. Robot Chicken is available if you need eggs for your household.
Yes, exactly.
Available for rent,
At this point, we're going to need cyborg eggs, considering all the stuff that's going around now.
Oh yeah. Also too, Kevin also worked on the animated series Mad. It's based
Right.
on the iconic Mad magazine. Oh my God.
Yes. We
I
did that
had
on
to add that in.
Cartoon Network for like 4 or 5 years. It went, I think, 4 seasons.
Hmm.
Um, such a fantastic time. I was over working at Robot Chicken, and those guys are like family. So even if I leave, I always keep one foot in the door over there for like, we did 3 Star Wars specials, we did 3 DC Comics specials, whatnot.
Hmm.
And then we got word that, or I got word that Warner Brothers was looking to turn Mad Magazine into an animated sketch comedy show,
Hmm.
kind of like Robot Chicken, but they wanted it to be like more for a prime time audience.
Hmm.
So, Robot Chicken can be a little blue at times
Oh
and a
yeah.
little obscene. So they were like, we want, families to be able to watch this, but we also want to give the sense, as Mad Magazine always was, that it's a little something that, you have to question whether you should be reading it at that age.
Yes.
So I went and met with Warner Brothers, and I had my take, and they loved my take. And then what was so wonderful about this experience is, I mean, you talk to anybody and anybody in comedy, and they were influenced by Mad Magazine. Everybody from The Simpsons, from
Okay.
Monty Python, from you name it.
Hmm.
And what was wonderful for me was to get to work with a lot of these original people. Now, I had a staff of like 15 in-house animators, but I also had Sergio Aragones, who was one of the original artists on
Yes.
Mad Magazine, who would come down once a month from his house in Ojai in his convertible with his ponytail blowing in the wind with his license plate that says Viva Mad, and he would hand me his drawings. It was just so old school that it was amazing to get the seal of approval from a lot of these original guys.
God. Oh
And if
my.
you're interested, I think you can still see them. I thought they'd be on HBO Max as it was Warner Brothers, but they're not. They're on Amazon Prime, so you can find them on Amazon Prime.
I have to look that up.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
Kevin, I'll be honest with you because um I'm gonna say I probably caught it's one of those channel surfing. I'm flipping through the channels
Mm-hmm.
like, holy cow, that's they're doing it,
I
and
know.
I then of course then I forget what time it comes on, and
Well, that's the problem now is there's hardly any, there's not much scrolling. It's more like destination TV, I
Hmm.
find nowadays if I hear about a show, I got to find out where it's streaming and I go look for it. But very rarely, unless you're talking to someone, do you come across a show on your own. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
They all need a little extra publicity because we don't have cable the way we used to.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. Okay, sorry, Kevin. I don't want to keep too much of your time. I want to keep
No,
going
it's
on because
fine. It's why we're here. This is fun.
so, all right. He also wrote the young adult novel Force Collector that is a part of the Journey to Star Wars series.
That's right. Star Wars Force Collector. It came out in 2019 and it was connected to Rise of Skywalker in name only. You can
Okay.
you can read this book separate from any story, but I'll
Hmm.
tell you what I love about this book and what Lucasfilm loved about it. I pitched it to them because they had come to me and said, "Did I want to do a take on?" They had a children's book in mind called Chewie and the Porgs,
Oh,
and would
oh,
I be interested in writing it?
yeah.
So I was like, "Sure." I
Mhm.
said, "But would you consider me for more adult stuff too?" And they were like, "Yeah, we didn't know you were interested." I was like, "Who wouldn't be interested?" You know what I mean? So I pitched. I said, "What are you looking for?" They gave me kind of a scope. So I pitched them this idea that I thought was incredible because if you know nothing about Star Wars, it's a great original tale of, a character that I created, and it's the rise and fall of this character. But if you know everything about Star Wars, it also touches upon every one of the Star Wars movies, the cartoons, the comics, the books, because it's about this kid who doesn't realize he has the Force. His grandmother says, I think you have the Force, because he doesn't know what it's all about. Yeah. But when he touches certain objects, he sees images from those objects before passing out. And she says, I think you have the Force. And he's like, what's the Force? She explains it to him. He's like, great, let me go find a Jedi to learn what to do. And she's like, well, they're all dead. Yeah. He's like, well, then how do I learn how to use the Force? And she's like, go out in the world and find objects that the Jedi have touched. And that will be your tutorial. And so he goes out into the world, questioning his place in the universe and finding all these objects. And that's what the fun of it is. If you touch a certain object, we go to Empire, we go to Clone Wars, we go to some of the comic books, the lesser known books. So it was all encompassing, and I had a great time doing it.
That's nice. That is.
I think you can get that on Amazon as well. This whole show is going to be a commercial for Amazon.
Yes, it is. All right. Also, too, he has written a number of comic books for Marvel and DC, such as Superior Carnage, Avenging Spider-Man, and The Flash. It's just to name a few. And Kevin, I'm going to ask you this, did I miss something? Is there something else you want to add for our listeners to check out?
You've got most of my stuff out there. I did, if you're interested in my writing, I wrote on Batman. My first story was in a Batman 80-page giant. I also did Joker's Asylum 2 with a Batman Clayface story. I would say some of my favorite work that I did was do you remember Superior Spider-Man Team Up? And that was a shoot off from Dan Slott's Superior Spider-Man. But what was amazing for me was Dan kind of let me do the heavy lifting with Doc Ock's emotional arc towards the end before he passes Spider-Man back to Peter Parker. And it happened there in Superior Spider-Man Team Up. So that was fun. What else? What's so funny? We're going to get into Host Mortem because I do want to talk about the graphic novel. And again, it's, I used to be a host. I had this idea, and the idea is basically, what would happen if two fake detective game show hosts from the 1990s had to solve a series of real murders in the 1940s? And, you're right what you know, as they say. Yes. And I was a host of Carmen Sandiego. Before that, my friend Greg Lee was the host of Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? So I had this idea to do that. But jumping ahead for a moment, yes. I feel like I shook the host tree because after I had this idea, I thought, oh, maybe I should try and get back into hosting. Maybe I should do whatever. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, an audition comes across my desk that I wound up getting. And as a result, I'm playing classic and legendary host Dick Clark in the new Michael Jackson movie, which is coming out in October. So again, I feel like I manifested this job. Yes. You know what I mean? It was like I shook the host tree, and this Dick Clark role fell out of it, and I was so happy to be able to do it.
Oh, that is so cool! Thank you for giving us that little tidbit. Now,
yeah, of course. I believe it comes out October 3rd. Right now is the date for the movie, and it's just called Michael.
Okay, all right, Kevin. Thank you very much for mentioning that. Thank you very much. Let me just. I just want to give a shout out to Dustin Holland of Superfan Promotion. Dustin, thank you very much for all your hard work behind the scenes in setting up this interview. Kevin, do you want to add anything? Would you like to give Dustin a shout out?
Dustin is just the hardest working man in Hollywood. So, yes, I appreciate all the work he's done and how he's getting word out about Host Mortem. And again, the Host Mortem, we're going to have a Kickstarter launch soon, but I like to talk about it now because we love people to follow us at Kickstarter. It's absolutely free to follow us on Kickstarter.
Yes.
And anything that sounds interesting today in our discussion about it, it's an 180-page graphic novel, and I've got an amazing creative team. I've got Damian Torres is my main artist.
Yes.
And as we talked about it earlier, we have to go back into the 1940s to solve murder mysteries.
Yes.
And I love that time period because I love film noir. And so I looked for a specific artist who'd be able to bring that to life. And Damian Torres really blew me away with his art. So I hired him to do this. Pippa Bolin is my wonderful colorist.
Yes.
Taylor Esposito is my letterer. And then what dawned on me as I was creating it was, this is, even though it's a 180-page graphic novel, it's made up of 4 separate issues. And each issue, in a very noir sense, is being narrated by a different character. So I thought, oh, it might be cool if a different artist or a different style were to be implemented into each issue to reflect who was talking.
Yes.
So that's when I went out and I reached out to Andrea Schiavone, who's an Italian artist that I love, who's got a great golden age style to his art that I thought worked for this 1940s situation that we're going into. But you know, the hook line for this graphic novel is, are hosts really smart, or do they just have the answers? And because Greg and I are very, you know, I've got so many facts in my head.
Yes.
You know, as I always joke, I said the fact that, you know, a singular strand of spaghetti is called spaghetto. Now, these are ridiculous facts, but I would love to be able to put them to some sort of good use somewhere in my life. And I thought, I wonder if all my accumulated knowledge, I could actually, even though I played a fake detective, I wonder if I could put this knowledge to good use and solve a murder like a real detective. So that's where the impetus came for this graphic novel. And the term host mortem, I thought summed it up well because it's tongue-in-cheek, it's meta, it's everything that I love. So if you love game shows, if you love trivia, if you love film noir, if you love comic books, if you love, you know, comedy, it's all those things wrapped up into one, I think, glorious graphic novel. And I can say glorious because I have so many wonderful artists working on it that it's not just my work that I'm touting. It's really this is like an art book for me now. It's so beautiful.
That's so nice. That is so nice. Like you said, that, you know, this is kind of like, it's in one of your press releases, like you said, it's a love letter to Hollywood.
It is. It really is. I mean, I hosted a history show, but that's no accident because I'm a history buff. And I was discovered, like, again, our hosts really smarter? Do they just have the answers? We also know a lot of things now that weren't known back in the 1940s. Does that make us smarter? I don't know. We're more aware. And one of those tidbits that I discovered, because again, I am a film buff, if you love film noir, then you're most likely familiar with The Big Sleep, which is that Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall movie that's very famous. And I discovered in doing my research that the movie came out in 1945. We all know that. And if you're a fan of the movie, maybe you know this, but they certainly didn't know it in 1945, was that the fact that the movie came out in 1946. What I discovered was the movie was actually completed in 1945 and released to like some army barracks where that, like a test audience. And they discovered they needed more scenes with Bogart and Bacall. So they went back and recut it. But in doing that, they had to recast a role or two. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if the one person we know is in this movie gets murdered off? Would the general public know that there was someone who played this role before them? And wouldn't they be a suspect? So it's things like that, you know, am I smart for knowing this? No, because in 1998, they discovered this first cut, and that's why we all know about it. But I'm smarter than the people in 1946. You know what I mean? So it's putting our work together and trying to see, like, can we do some good back in that era?
Oh, that is so nice.
And we don't have a date yet because, like I said, the more people who follow us, the sooner we can launch this. But you know, what's great about Kickstarter for me is I'm a fan of Kickstarter. I'm a fan of comic books. And in this day and age, you know, the comic book world is kind of in flux.
Yes.
You know, as you said, you know, Diamond is no longer and all these. So I have found that this community is really going to Kickstarter for their comic books. And like where I used to go to comic shops on Wednesdays, I still do that to support them. But I also hit Kickstarter on Mondays because that's when a lot of these new projects are announced.
Yes.
And I love the community that supports Kickstarter. And so as a result of that, I thought, let me see if I can offer some rewards that are very unique to who's tuning into this. And so I have the typical rewards for comic book lovers, like you can own a page of the art. You can have your name or likeness appear in the graphic novel.
Nice.
You could be murdered off in the storyline, things like that. But then I tried to think out, what do I have that I can offer that's unique that others can't? And so, you know, I do a lot of voiceovers. I'm a big voice on Robot Chicken. I was one of the main voices on Mad. I'm the voice of Bruce Banner across Marvel's animated universe for a while. So I thought one option should be like, I'll do voiceover or narration for your project. up, if you're interested. So that's a tier. Meeting Greg and I for dinner and discussing your futures and your projects that you hope, all these things. So we've got like video and Zoom offers. We've got Damien and I will critique your comic book that you're trying to get off the ground. So I try to make these unique and really appetizing, because not only do I want people to get this amazing book, I want people to, it's a collaboration, I want people to support me, but I want to support them back. And I'm doing that by offering them some unique things that I can actually help them in their endeavors.
Oh, that is so cool. Kevin, that is so cool.
Glad you think so.
You know, but because like you said, you love comics, you still go on Wednesdays because
yeah,
we it's just we still love them. But then also too, like for me, like I back um I go through the certain Kickstarters and I'll back them too.
Yeah.
And what's so nice about Kickstarter too is that and I always got to make this clear, is that whether they work for Marvel, Mad Cave, or they do their independent work through Kickstarter.
Right.
What it is that there's still the love and passion. But what I love with Kickstarter is that the writer and the artist, they can take their time in crafting their story.
Yes.
It's almost like and I always use this analogy. It's like going to like either a hole-in-the-wall restaurant or a fine dining experience where you have a nice meal where you can sit there and eat.
Right.
Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because
But also, being on both sides of the Kickstarter, having backed them too, the book has been written. I'm having each issue drawn now, so you won't have to wait that long to get it. The other fun thing is my artists are creating this in real time, meaning I haven't told them who the murderer is. I'm the only one who knows that. So my artists don't know it, because I didn't want it to influence their drawing and their lettering, all that stuff. So I thought, let me keep that a secret. And at one point I said to them, do you want me to tell you? And they were all like, no, let's keep it the way we're going. We like the mystery. So it's been fun to keep it from them too. And I have to say, this is a fun graphic novel. It's it's all these things, but my feeling is at its core, I have to have a legit mystery. And I'm a huge mystery buff. I love murder mysteries books and TV shows. I was a huge fan of Columbo, all those things. I mean, the funny thing is, I was saying before to someone, I feel like all roads were leading to this host mortem of mine, because I wrote for Batman. He's the world's greatest detective.
Yes.
I wrote the feature film Scooby-Doo and Kiss, Rock and Roll Mystery.
So
I worked with the Mystery Machine, and I helped launch the series, the Mike Tyson Mysteries. So mysteries are in my DNA. and I thought for a while, like, I should work on something of my own. And that's when I came up with this. And I thought, what can I do? What can I offer the world that's unique to me? That no one else can beat me to the punch, because only I can deliver it. And when I sat down to create an original detective, I thought, wait a second, I am one. I played myself as a time-traveling detective in Carmen Sandiego. And so I had this idea of, even before I thought of Greg, I thought, I'd love to go back to the 40s because I want to deal with this big sleep. And I thought, wait a minute, Greg played himself as a 1940s gumshoe detective. So it all kind of fell into place. And the funny thing is, Greg and I, even though our shows were back to back in terms of years, I didn't meet Greg for like 20 or so years after the series ended. And it was only about 5 years ago. And we had a mutual friend who had a film at a film festival. And when we showed up there, we met each other for the first time, hit it off, exchanged numbers, but then never spoke. When I had this idea like last year, I out of the blue reached out to Greg and was like, Greg, I want to do this graphic novel about two fake detective game show hosts of the 90s. And he was like, I'm in. So, and you know what? I got inspired by things like, if you remember the movie The In-Laws, and also the TV series The Odd Couple. Just the idea of two people who shouldn't really be joined at the hip, having to solve something.
Mm-hmm.
And now I have to say, I don't know if your listeners will remember, Tony Randall was a movie star and a TV star, and he
Yes.
was the original Felix Unger in the TV series of The Odd Couple. He was a great friend and mentor of mine. I did a lot of Broadway theater, and I was a member of his National Actors Theater.
Mm-hmm.
So I just find it very fitting that this host mortem includes like an odd couple aspect to it, because the great thing about host mortem is, and why it's been such a delight to write, is it incorporates all of my interests. Like I said before, film noir, game shows, trivia, comic books, and now the odd couple. So there's a lot going on here, because if you're a fan of film noir, like I am, what I love about film noir is it almost seems like it shouldn't work all the things that are bringing it together. It's almost like a Caravaggio painting from the 1600s, and based on pulp stories from the 1940s, as seen through the eyes of like German expressionistic directors. There are three things there that shouldn't really work together, and yet it comes out beautiful. And that's what I'm trying to recapture with host mortem, which is so many different elements, which on paper may not seem like, wait a minute, this and this and this work together, but they really do. Homicide, hosting, and humor have come together in host mortem, and I think it's going to be something that people are really going to want to have, because I've kind of created my own genre of game show gumshoe. And I want to do more issues of this. I want to do an original novel of this. And there are so many ways that I see paths forward. But it all has to start with people backing this original graphic novel, which is why we're here. And again, if you can go to Kickstarter, I've also made it easier. You can go to hostmortem.com and sign up there. You can also follow me across all social media. I'm at Kevin Shinick. It's Shinick across basically all social media. And lastly, I'm trying to think of all the places I'm online. I created a Substack, a free Substack called Game Show Gumshoe. And I chronicle the creating of this graphic novel. It's a little motivational memoir going on in there. So if you're looking to be inspired, you're looking to know more about host mortem or the work I'm doing, definitely head on over to Game Show Gumshoe, which is kevinshinick.substack.com.
Oh, Kevin. Thank you very much. I've got to ask a couple fun questions for you.
Please.
How much fun did you and Greg have during the research of this story? And let me just also add on, did you guys go to any of the studio costume archives to
Well, I worked at Warner Brothers for a long time between Mad and Scooby-Doo and all that stuff. So, just being on the set there or on the studio lot is inspiring enough. Greg is my muse. Greg likes to he likes to take a back seat and say this is all me. But honestly, like I said, this wouldn't have happened if he didn't say, yeah, include me. Because for me, the whole fun of it was two of the hosts of Carmen Sandiego coming together and doing this. So I am a huge fan of The Big Sleep and all the film noir. So yes, I just went down a rabbit hole. I had done it already in life, but I went down the rabbit hole. But then you got to be careful, because I learned this with my Star Wars novel, Force Collector, which is I can talk Star Wars with the best of them. I literally sat next to George Lucas and created, we did 3 Star Wars specials for Robot Chicken. I was on that ill-fated series Star Wars Detours, which was a Star Wars animated sitcom, which George wanted. We wrote 3 full seasons. We produced 2 full seasons, and then he sold the company. And then Kathleen Kennedy was like, "Nah, I don't think we're going to do this." So it's sitting on a shelf somewhere. But my point being, I know so much about Star Wars that you have to stop for a moment and be like, "Well, wait a minute. Am I writing this novel to show off, or am I writing this novel? You don't want to alienate people if they don't know so much. So it's a fine line of how much information is needed to keep your audience engaged, and how much is too much to be like, well, I'm not even enjoying this because they're just throwing facts at me.
Yeah.
But again, that being said, I've got a lot of odd facts in my head that find its way into host mortem, because we got to find an outlet for it somewhere.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And this is a great outlet to do it.
I know. And well, what's so funny is I had these ideas of at first I thought, should I incorporate even more hosts? Because the 90s, when Carmen Sandiego was on, were filled for some reason with fake detectives. You know, you had Blue's Clues, you had Figure It Out on Nickelodeon, you had Cluedo, you had all these things. And I realized I had enough story with just Greg and I. So I saved these ideas for future issues. And also what's incredible is this thing is picking up momentum because at first I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna do host mortem. How would I promote it? Well, I can do a panel at Comic-Con. Who would I invite? And then it dawned on me, I know a lot of nostalgia hosts, a lot of hosts that, from when people were growing up. I thought this is coming together as almost an additional live improv game show. Again, the question being, are hosts smart or do they just have the answers? And I thought, I'd like to put together the show where we have to compete with the audience to see who knows more.
Oh, that's
so
nice.
I'm trying to get that off the ground too. But again, it all has to start with Host Mortem, the Kickstarter, which you can go to Kickstarter or hostmortem.com.
Ah, it's nice. Okay, so like you mentioned, you and Greg, you guys hosted, different versions of Carmen Sandiego. This is a fun question. Will there be someone popping up in a big fedora hat and a trench coat? Because it's the 40s. It's just they're in the background.
You know what? I was gonna say you can't avoid that. You can't avoid that the fedora and the trench coat. So I know what you're saying, and I said, yeah, I think you should tune in to see who's there.
Yeah, we can't say we can't because you can't name it because then it's like the property.
Yeah, exactly. I don't own the rights to those things, but I'm not saying we're not going to run into somebody.
Yeah,
it's a big world, especially in 1947.
Okay, so Kevin, I'm just going to ask this one little process question because, like you mentioned, like right now, there's a lot of influx going on with comic book industry right now.
Yes.
May I ask, were there some concerns publishing this book before it's launching the campaign, or like trying to figure out publishing it, or was this all figured out before Diamond?
I wear a lot of hats in my career, as you mentioned in the beginning of this podcast. But one thing I've learned is there are enough roadblocks in this business that I don't even take any of them into consideration when I'm just starting out. Because if you start to stop yourself, well, what if this, what if that, what if this doesn't happen, you'll never get out of bed. So I just put my first hat I put on is my fan hat. And I say, as a fan, as a reader of comics and a fan of all these things, what do I want to see? What would I find entertaining? So, and I start there. And, if something happens where I have to pivot and figure something out, like I said, this story was going to be bigger. And then I realized, wait a second, I don't need it. I think there's enough story right here with Greg and I. So you pivot as you go. But I'm not going to let anything hold back. This book is going to see the light of day one way or the other because I think the work that's being put in, again, by Damian and Pippa, Taylor, Andrea, all those people. Not to mention, I have to add, that's my key and core creative team. But I reached out very early on for different variant covers because I wanted, to have things to offer. And I also love just looking at this. So like my Star Wars novel, Force Collector, had a cover on it that was by an artist named Tony Foti, whose drawings I loved. So as soon as I came up with the idea for Host Mortem, I called Tony and said, do you have time to do a cover for me? And he said, yes. And we spoke about it. And he delivered this beautiful cover, which I loved. Damian has done a wonderful cover. There's a gentleman named Timothy Anderson who, if you love Blade Runner, you might remember a couple of years ago, he turned, as an artist, Blade Runner into a very pulp book for like, you know what I mean? It was like a 1940s pulp novel.
Oh my God,
and he had this, it's a beautiful image. So I reached out to him and said, would you do something like this for Host Mortem? He did that. And then finally, I've got a gentleman named Jesse Larson who has a great like Edward Gorey style that I thought would really be perfect for Host Mortem. And he has done something that I'm going to use. So the amount of talent coming together on Host Mortem, beyond me even, is immense. So that's why I'm determined to have this book see the light of day. But I could use people's help in getting the word out and showing followers because that's how Kickstarter works. I'm learning as I go. The more followers you have, the easier it is to launch and the more chances you have for success.
Oh, Kevin, I love your enthusiasm and I love, I'm not just saying this, but I'm waiting for this to launch, and I'm going to back it.
Oh, I'm so happy. Thank you.
Because because the other thing too, and like you said, just your enthusiasm, because you're right. Because when I'm looking, you mentioned about, like, you know, um, actor, creative, director, writer, producer, you're going to face all these. Okay, no, we can't do this. No,
Always,
we got to
always.
change. We have to, instead of 12 episodes, we got to do 6. And, and it's like, and
yeah. Yeah.
so
And I will say, I hate it whenever that happens. And yet I could almost say 9 out of 10 times something better has come out because of the restrictions or because of a roadblock. And you had a pivot and you're like, oh, wow, I came up with this because, in all fairness, I was working on something like this a while ago as a TV pilot. And people loved it. It was just a straight up noir detective thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't me.
Mm-hmm.
And people were like, I love this, but no one's going to make it because it's period. And
Mm-hmm.
period doesn't sell easily, even though everything I watch seems to be period. So I don't know where that comes from. However, they were like, you're a comic book guy. You should turn this into a graphic novel. And I thought, I know, but there already are noir comic books out there that are very good. So what's going to break through the noise? What's going to stand out for me? And that's when I was like, wait a second. This has become such a better idea with Greg and I as the detectives than it was when it is in its original form. So, in some ways, challenges make you better.
Yes.
And this is one of those instances. And I'm sure more challenges will arise as we go down. But the key thing is not to give into them. It's to work with them, pivot. It's a journey, and you'll get there.
Yes. Like I said, I just love your positive attitude.
Oh, thanks.
I really do. Now I'm going to ask, let's say if someone misses out on this campaign and after all the pledges have been fulfilled, will the graphic novel be available sometime in the future on a website? Or
well, look, if we provided we make our Kickstarter, which I'm hoping we will.
You will.
We do, and now I'm going to go with your positivity. When we're winning the Academy Award in 2033, I'll be thanking you, Jason. But yes, people will all be able to go to their bookshelves and be like, "Oh, I see, I bought this ages ago." Because I'm sure we'll find a way. It is being distributed, I should add, by Clover Press, who, if you're a comic book fan, they do remarkable work with a lot of Marvel artists and just books in general. And when I think of Clover Press, why I got so excited when they reached out to me was, there's a certain prestige I feel with their books. And when I had this book in mind of Host Mortem, it was more than just a story. It's a piece of art. And so far, the artists I've brought in to work on this have elevated it even more. And that's why I don't want this, it's going to be a great story, but I want this to be like part of my collection. I want to display it in my library. You know what I mean? So Clover is going to release that. And look, if you're a Clover Press fan, then if my book is going to be up there between The Spirit and Dick Tracy, other books that they've released, I was like, I'm in good company. So yeah, Clover Press, I'm super excited to be working with on this.
Oh, that is so nice. All right. So
what do you got? Hit me. What do you got?
I'm just Kevin, thank you very much. I mean, you've talked about, you made it easy for me. Thank you very much.
Well, now I need to make it easy for your listeners.
No.
Go to hostmortem.com.
Yes. All right. I'm just going to start slowly wrapping things up.
Sure.
Actually, I want to start up because we have a little time.
Yeah.
Now, listeners, this is, of course, an audio podcast. As Kevin has mentioned, he has written, for the Batman 80-page comic book. Kevin is a huge Batman fan. So I'm going to point out, we can't see it, but so Kevin, can you tell me the story of
it's so funny.
The Joker and Batman.
Yes. So I'm sitting here, I'm zooming with Jason right now, and he noted in my back, I've got a bunch of comic book art on my wall. And one of them is an original drawing by Jerry Robinson, who created or co-creator of the Joker and early Batman. And so I met him at Comic-Con one time, and I waited online like everybody else to have maybe him do a commission. And when I got up there, he was later in life, I'm not sure exactly how old he was, but he was up there. And he said, what would you want? Would you like Batman, Joker, or both? And I thought, well, if he's going to offer both, I'm going to go both.
Yeah.
The poor guy took 15 minutes to do this. And when he was done, he was so exhausted. He was like, I got to go back to the hotel. And there was a line of people behind me who were like, no. So everybody was so upset with me that I exhausted Jerry Robinson. And I used up all his energy on my commission. But as you see, it's proudly displayed on my wall. So, and it's not far from, I have an original Bob Kane of the heads of Batman and Robin. So they're all in good keeping.
So I'm just gonna add the original drawing by Bob Kane. Did you pick it up from him originally, or was
No,
it from
no, no, no.
like one
When
of his?
years ago, I collect historical letters. So I've got a letter from Charles Dickens. I've got a letter from Orson Welles, from Laurence Olivier. And in going through those collections, there are certain places, just like Comic Cons, there are these book fairs and things. And I came across this original drawing of the heads of Batman and Robin by Bob Kane. And I don't know how I was lucky to do it, but this is, gosh, 30 years ago probably. And I've had it since. So yeah, it's part of my prized possession. And now I'm going to put up in between the two of them some of the great work that has been done for Host Mortem, because I swear that the caliber of this work is so beautiful that again, I want to display it in my own home, and you can too. So
Yes.
that's my pitch.
Oh, that is nice. And yes, and I'm just gonna mention, because as you already as you mentioned, like as part of one of the rewards is owning original art from the
Yes, yes.
post-mortem. Yes.
Damien's got some, what's so interesting now is, especially referring to these art pieces of art behind me, is it's becoming a lost art, because I used to, every time I did a comic book, I would buy a page from the artist so I could have a memento. And then I realized artists don't do that anymore, because they're all working on their tablets. So
Yes.
there's nothing to buy unless you specifically ask, can you do? Because I was working with an artist on like a Spider-Man comic. I loved Batman, but Spider-Man's my guy also. I'm the only I'm the only person to have written Spider-Man for the comics, the stage, and the screen, because and everybody says I did not do the Julie Taymor one, but about a decade earlier, I did the first ever feature-length version of Spider-Man that played to sold-out crowds at Radio City Music Hall. It toured the country for like 40 cities and stuff, and was a blast. But so what was brought to my attention when I said to my artist, "Oh, I love this page. Can I buy it from you?"
Yes.
And he was like, "Oh, you should have told me, because it's on my tablet. I didn't do it on paper." And so I was very careful to say to Damien and during our Host Mortem, "Hey, put aside these pages and do these, because I would love to auction them off and have them for backers, because it's too good not to be on someone's wall."
Oh, that's so nice.
And, there's going to be opportunities for, I'm hoping for a launch party for this graphic novel. And there's a chance to come to that, and meet Greg and I, or meet other hosts. There's a chance to, like I said, we can send you a video. We can Zoom with you. We want to help you guys, and that's been as much fun to me as writing this book, because again, as a backer on other people's Kickstarters, that's the fun when I start digging into other projects. Like, oh, all right, what are their tiers? And like, oh, look at this. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm excited for people to see what we're offering.
Oh, that is so nice. Okay. What is your next store or convention appearance for this year, 2025?
I don't know just yet, to be honest. I've been so busy working on this. I did one in Chicago recently, and now I've had my nose to the grindstone for Host Mortem that I haven't picked my head up to say what con I'm going to be at. So, but if you follow me at Kevin Shinick on any of those, usually Instagram, but I'm also on Twitter and Blue Sky and all those things, I always post there what cons I'm going to be heading to with enough time to go see them.
Okay, all right. Now, have you and your family been to Hawaii?
I have a couple of times,
Nice.
but I will say my favorite time was I had the pleasure of spending time in Richard Donner's house in Maui. Richard Donner, of course, who, Christopher Reeve's Superman, the director of that, and multiple other things. Jeff Johns is a good friend of mine, and so I was with him. We were vacationing together, and he was like, "Oh, Dick Donner's down the block. We should go say hi." And so we did.
Yes.
And it was just it's so surreal, but it was so I met him a number of times after that, but that was my first official meeting, and it was just great to meet him in his own home in on Hawaii.
Oh my God. I have to ask you off the cuff question. So um when Jeff said, "Hey, let's go down, let's go meet Richard Donner, let's just walk down," what was your reaction? Like, what? Were you joking?
Well, yeah. Well, I knew he was friends with Dick,
Yes.
and so it wasn't so that moment wasn't that like, oh my God. I think it was more like, oh my God, I'm about to meet Richard Donner. But it wasn't a shock that he knew him because I think he even said like, oh, we'll be vacationing close to where Dick is, so maybe we'll say hello. And I thought, oh wow, that'd be great if we could.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. You know what's so funny about how I met Jeff is at Robot Chicken. I had just started at Robot Chicken, and I think he had an office in the same building.
Mm-hmm.
And so Jeff and I bump into each other, don't know each other, and we hit it off famously. And we were like, oh, and in my head, I just knew him as Jeff.
Yeah.
And so I don't know who this guy was, but we had a great, and even Jeff would say, like, I feel like we were best friends in another life or we're brothers or something like that. And I said, I know, me too. Nice. And then a week or so later, we're in the Robot Chicken room and someone said, oh, there's going to be cake downstairs for Jeff Johns' birthday. And I thought to myself, oh, I'm going to get to meet Jeff Johns, not knowing it was the Jeff I had already just met. In my head, my friend was Jeff as opposed to Geof. But it was so funny when I walk in the room, I'm like, oh, wait. You're Jeff John. Oh, okay. It was kind of funny that we met that way first. So yeah, I mean, at this point it's surreal because there are so many people that I grew up loving their work. Like Kelly Jones and Ron Ferez and things that were able to, like Ron Ferez in that same issue of Superior Spider-Man Team Up that I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast. I had a flashback. Because I've discovered, I thought, Doc Ock and Green Goblin must have paired up at some point, and I realized they never had.
That's
so I said, I'm going to create a flashback to the point where they did, and so since it was a flashback, the editor was like, we should see if we can get Ron to come and do this, and he did, and I was like, oh my God! So people like that. And now as writers, we're all peers and I'm good friends with a lot of these people who we're all in the comic book business together, but I've been able to become a fan, but also a friend to a lot of the artists that I grew up loving. So I'm very blessed that way.
Sorry, I'm just going to throw this in, Kevin, because listeners, if you guys get a chance, try to look for the Tom DeFalco, Ron Friends run on Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah,
that was. I mean, I love the when Ross Audrew, because I caught the last few issues when Ross Audrew drew it and stuff. Those are great, but just the Tom DeFalco and Ron Friends, that run.
I know.
Really, it's oh my God.
I know. I have to do a plug. I don't have to, but I'd like to. It just crossed my mind. So I was asked to be part of this documentary that a friend of mine is a director of, and it's called Selling Superman. And I bring it up only because of our conversation where it's the story of Adam Schomer is the director, and he's my friend. And he asked me if I'd come on as a talking head of my comic book knowledge and stuff and of Superman. But the subject matter is he had a friend whose dad had a comic book collection, but did not, back then it was called Asperger's. His dad had, I guess, Asperger's, and he didn't want his son to talk about the comics. He didn't want his son to look at them or touch them or anything. And then when the dad passes away, they realize he's got thousands and thousands upon priceless comics.
Yes.
And so the question becomes like, do you hang on to them because it's your connection to your dad, or do you sell them? Yeah. But it's got like, the second most expensive issue of Superman #1, and things like that. And so why I bring it up is even if you it's a fantastic documentary on its own, but even if you just look at the visuals, to be able to see all these gorgeous covers from our childhood, it just puts you in your happy place if you're a comic book fan. And it just, I'm not sure where it's streaming. I think you can find it on Amazon, Amazon Prime to rent, but it's worth checking out if only for the beautiful artwork that takes you down memory lane. And when he pulls out these comics from his dad's collection, you're like, oh my God, I remember that. I remember it. Just opens your mind to things you probably didn't think about in 30 years.
God, because if I remember correctly, because I remember they did it came out on the not like before they made the documentary, they were talking about making the documentary, but I remember it came out in the news maybe about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, and it's not just beat up red issues. It's
No, pristine.
I know. It's like
They're in
holy.
fantastic. And I have to say, my hat's off to Adam because he really does capture the Comic-Con crowd and the world of Comic-Con that you and I know.
Yes.
It's not an outsider looking in.
Yeah.
You feel part of it, and you talk to people it's their livelihood, it's their love. It's like us. And so, yeah, it's called Selling Superman.
Yes.
I think it's four episodes on Amazon Prime. And I had the privilege of being a talking head for some of it. But it just dawned on me when we were talking about these beautiful covers that we're fortunate enough to to have. And I'm going to use this opportunity to loop it back in because you can own a great cover from Host Mortem from these wonderful artists that 30 years from now, when we're accepting our Academy Award, we're going to say, hey, remember 30 years ago? Look at this cover I have that's still in pristine condition because I got it from Clover Press.
We've already talked a lot about Host Mortem. Thank you very much. Kevin, I'm just going to ask any other closing words to our listeners?
Gosh, I don't know. Other than look, and this goes into the tiers and the rewards for Kickstarter. This is my project, and I hope you'll support it. But we should all support each other, and that's why I'm on Kickstarter. That's why I back other people's books. That's why I say if you have an idea, just make it. We're living in a time where there's a lot of crossroads on television, on film, in comic books, where the normal path is no longer the most viable.
Yes.
And we don't know what the new one is yet. It might be Kickstarter. It might be crowdfunding. It might be something that's coming new tomorrow. But what's not going to change is the creative. And if you have an idea, write it. If you're an artist, find a writer. If you're a writer, find an artist and just get your work out there, because I do feel it's good for the soul. Yes. I've been told a number of times, and I truly feel that when you have an idea, it either grows you or it kills you. You know what I mean? If you don't get it out, it's stifling. So I encourage everyone to, whatever your interests are, comic books, music, acting, directing, go out and do what you want to do, because the world has rules and they'll keep you down if you listen to them. But it's like, this is the undiscovered country. Keep it like that. Do whatever you need to do to be seen.
Kevin, thank you very much. That's the perfect closing. Thank you very much.
Oh, no, of course. I mean it sincerely.
No, I know. Thank you very much. And mahalo for your time. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to interview. Oh my God, this is a great interview. I love it. I love your positive energy. It's so cool.
Thank you. So, thank you.
And I want to say thank you very much for making comics. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's just a joy. It's not even work. You know what I mean? Yeah, it really is. So, may we all get to do what we like to do.
No, but thank you. Now, I want to also wish you all the success with your Kickstarter, Host Mortem. I want to thank Dustin of Superfan Promotion for setting up this interview. So, Dustin, thank you very much. Now, if you are a new comic book reader or a lifelong comic book reader who loves time traveling stories, murder mystery stories, little trivias, then this is the book for you. So, if you get a chance, please check out this campaign. Just go to the Host Mortem, Kickstarter page, and Kevin, I'm being serious on this part. Listeners, if you have a friend who loves comics, who loves these types of things, murder mysteries, crime noir, time traveling, pick up an extra copy and give it to them as a gift, like when we were little kids.
Yeah,
we used to read comics, used to pass comics around.
Yep.
But, I mean, pick up buy a copy of this, give it to your friend as a gift, so. And it'll be a nice way also to support this campaign. I want to thank
again, follow us there because it's free to follow.
Mm-hmm.
And if you follow, then you'll be the first to hear of any, like, we're going to have a bunch of like early bird specials that we're only offering to people who, you know, have followed us early and stuff. So another encouragement to get up there on hostmortem.com and Kickstarter and just sign up. It's free. Just put your email in and then we'll send you all the updates.
All right. Thank you. And I want to thank Drew, the co-host of Comics for Fun and Profit, for putting this episode together. Drew, thank you very much for all your hard work behind the scenes. And if you are a new listener, please check out new episodes of Comics for Fun and Profit that comes out every Saturday. And I want to thank you, the listener. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening to this episode. Until next time, guys. Aloha.
From the islands where the sun meets the sea, Jason's the voice we all wanna be. Interviewing creators, making comics come alive. With every story, he helps us thrive. Reading comics, he's got the best taste. No story too big, no hero to waste. He's the man with the passion and the insight, bringing comics to life, shining bright. Jason from Hawaii, diving in deep, unveiling the stories that we wanna keep. From creators to heroes, he's got the scoop on the comics for fun and profit loops. So tune in, you don't wanna miss. Jason's the voice of comic book bliss. From Marvel to DC, Indie and more, Jason's the guy who opens the door with every interview. He's setting the stage, bringing creators to life, page by page. He loves the craft, the art and the lore. Comic books are where they'll always explore. So grab your books and listen in. Jason's the guide, let the journey begin. Jason from Hawaii, diving in deep, unveiling the stories that we wanna keep. From creators to heroes, he's got the scoop on the comics for fun and profit loops. So tune in, you don't wanna miss. Jason's the voice of comic book bliss. With a heart for comics and a voice that's true, Jason's the co-host, bringing the crew. In every interview, you'll hear the spark, a passion for comics that leaves a mark. Jason's from Hawaii, diving in deep, unveiling the stories that we wanna keep. From creators to heroes, he's got the scoop on the comics for fun and profit loops. So tune in, you don't wanna miss. Jason's the voice of comic book bliss. Jason from the islands with comics in his soul. Every episode, he's making it whole. With every page turned and every story told, Jason's the comic book guy, pure gold.